Hey everybody, it's the dude here to bring you another video. The Walking Dead is back on, and so am I. This episode covered more ground and had our characters walking in tandem through more places than any other episode this season. So let's just dive on into my review and analysis of Season 7, Episode 9 of The Walking Dead. Episode 9 is called Rockin' the Road. First, more literally, it refers to the roadblocks set up by the saviors that our characters have to overcome. And secondly, it is a direct reference to the story Rick tells to Ezekiel, in one of the longest lines Rick Grimes has ever had. But first, we open at Alexandria. Father Gabriel is keeping watch, telling me that this is the same night we saw after the credits of Episode 8, when the mysterious boots person dropped into Alexandria. Gabriel briefly finds comfort in an unseen Bible verse before turning to his left. We, the audience, don't hear anything, but I bet that what got Gabriel's attention was the sound of those boots hitting the ground. We see him down from the lookout post, looking around. Then suddenly, he's entering Olivia's house. He heads for the storage room where we hear a violent crash. Then we see Gabriel hurriedly getting supplies. Something seems very wrong with Gabriel. I believe that a scene has purposefully been omitted from this storyline in order to get the audience to think that Gabriel is doing all this for selfish reasons. I think right after this shot, Gabriel was confronted by the boots person. He may have been forced to steal these supplies if the person threatened him. But it's also possible that the person needs help. That they've said they need supplies, and Gabriel, being the righteous good guy team player that he is, agreed to give them supplies, follow them back to where they live in the hopes of forming an alliance between the two groups. From everything they showed us of Gabriel this season, there is no way he turned to the dark side. We see him flipping through what looks like Olivia's gun catalog, a section of which has a Lucille bat drawn on it in a different type of ink. This could have been drawn by a rot, denoting which of these guns were taken from the Savior's outpost. Gabriel mumbles to himself, just checking. Maybe that actually wasn't being said to himself. What if the boots person is right there next to him, and this is Gabriel showing them that Alexandria doesn't have any guns? This may have also been when Gabriel wrote the note that Rick finds later, telling him that this is related to the boat him and Aaron found. We then see him drop his Bible on the ground. This is yet another sign to Rick that there is something very wrong here. After he loads up his car, as he's pulling away, we see a hooded figure sit up next to him. It looks more like they were in the back seat, which we just saw was full of boxes, so most likely they're in the front, telling me that this isn't a surprise to Gabriel. He knew they were in the car when he started to drive away. It's not like he's just simply stealing all this for himself, and at the same time, the boots person has snuck into his car. I think the events are definitely both connected. Hell of a way to start off the episode. Anything Father Gabriel related is always unexpected, and I like the element of mystery it gives to the start of this half of the season. We pick up with the rest of our people at the hilltop, trying to make a deal with Gregory. He, of course, wants nothing to do with them. He calls Rick Ricky, Maggie Margaret. Jesus does what he does best and alludes that Maggie should be the leader of the hilltop, not Gregory. When asked by Maggie how many fighters the hilltop could offer, Gregory says, what are you gonna do? You're gonna start a platoon of sorghum farmers? 'Cause that's what we got. They grow things. They're not gonna want to fight. I gotta say, the actor playing Gregory is killing it. He's got him despicable and sleazy, straight out of the comics, but with fresh new dialogue. I love it, and I can't wait for him to die. Tara says to him, "You're wrong. When people have the chance to do the right thing, they usually step up." This is how they've showed us time and time again how Tara feels. She didn't rat out the Oceansiders to Rosita yet. She stepped up to a Rot's gun for Eugene. It all just seems to say to me that she is the type of character that would sacrifice herself for the greater good. So look out for that. Everybody tries to make a case to Gregory to no avail. But, of course, Tara's right. Outside, they find a whole crop of hilltoppers ready to go. Heading out, Rosita says that it still won't be enough. Then, Jesus finally brings up the kingdom. And, in a double line straight out of the comics, Jesus says, "I think it's time you meet Ezekiel. King Ezekiel." Ding. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a double line is when a character says a line once and then says it again with different inflection for more emphasis. It happens all the time in the show, and since the season premiere, I have been keeping a tally. Now on the outskirts of the kingdom, Rick somehow waited all this time to ask, "It's called the kingdom?" Yeah, I didn't name it. How much farther? Well, technically we're already here. I mean, we're always here. But here we are, at the kingdom. Jesus is really at his best when he's not talking. Richard and another one of the kingdom's knights approach, the other one shouting, "Who dares to trespass on the sovereign land of the—" Oh shit! Jesus, is that you? Richard allows Rick and Co. to pass as long as they give up their weapons. Rick hands his python over, and then Carl hands one over too. Wait, how did Carl get a gun? The last gun in Alexandria was Rosita's, and Negan just took that at the end of episode 8. Carl didn't have a gun when Negan brought him back to Alexandria, and that was the last time we saw him. How did he get a gun? Inside the kingdom now, Rick gets a look at the crops and citizens, as well as the never-before-seen kingdom army training. That's pretty convenient. Then Tara spots Morgan and gives him a hug. Why did Tara get to have that reunion first? Tara and Morgan barely even know each other. When Morgan showed up at the end of season 5, Tara was unconscious in bed. We never actually got to see them formally meet. They didn't have a scene together until the herd, but in that case, Morgan was unconscious. Then Tara fought in the outpost mission, which Morgan didn't approve of and didn't go on, and then left immediately with Heath. I'm surprised Morgan even knows her name. Then we get a long-awaited conversation. Rick and Daryl ask Morgan about Carol, and Morgan tells the whole story, including how he killed the Savior to save Carol's life. But he lies and says that once Carol was healed, she left, and that he doesn't know where she is. I was really interested to see how Morgan was eventually going to handle this confrontation, and I'm glad that he kept his word to Carol. But of course, I don't think that'll stop Daryl from finding out. Next, in the auditorium, they take another swing and a miss at the CGI tiger, and that's strike 2. They try to make Rick look all cool, like the tiger doesn't blow his mind. He's like, yeah, tiger. And honestly, I think that's pretty stupid. Tiger would totally blow my mind even if I was Rick Grimes. They only did that because they already used the whole, oh, I forgot to mention he has a tiger line with Morgan and Carol in episode 2. Ezekiel says, Jesus! It pleases me to see you, old friend. It pleases him indeed. Jerry, no more double lines. I welcome you all to the kingdom, good travelers. Now what brings you to our fair land? Rick jumps right into it and says, we both serve the saviors. Ezekiel is immediately angered because it's obvious that Jesus told them the secret that Ezekiel's been keeping from all of his people. Michonne says that Negan killed good people, and Morgan, of course, is like, who? Rick doesn't say it. Rosita does. Abraham? Glenn, Spencer, Olivia. She talks about Daryl and Eugene. God, saying them all like that kind of takes the punch out of the whole Abraham and Glenn death. Rick does restate that they were brutally beat to death. But the first time Morgan hears that is very important. And for me, especially from Rosita, it felt just a little rushed. Rick wants the kingdom to join them. Richard thinks it's a good idea, but Ezekiel asks Morgan. And still, to Rick's disappointment, Morgan says there has to be another way. That maybe they could just capture Negan. With that, Ezekiel starts to wrap it up. But Rick, seeing that he's almost lost him, dives into his rockin' the road speech. It's a convenient tale that Rick's mother told him, that fortunately involves a king, and is a perfect metaphor for the situation they're all in. It's about this actual rock in the road to a kingdom that people get hurt on, but everyone seems to just want to avoid it. Until one day, a little girl uses all her strength to dig it up. Underneath, she finds a bag of gold, left there by the wise king, who knew that whoever dug the rock out deserved to be rewarded for their struggle. It's all about how this fight with Negan, the massive rock in their road, is worth the struggle. Because in the end, everybody gets to live happily ever after. It's a good speech. Andrew Lincoln's great, and must have been thrilled to have another We Are the Walking Dead kind of moment, but it's just too perfect. It applies too well to this story to have been told to Rick so long ago. And even given all that, it still doesn't work. Afterwards, we get a scene with Benjamin. He runs into Carol in the woods. He tells her that Ezekiel doesn't want to bother her, he just wants to look after the people he cares about. Carol gives her classic, harsh survival advice, and they part ways. I assume that the point of this scene is so that when Benjamin totally inevitably dies, that it will affect Carol more, in order to get her involved in this war. Later, at night, Benjamin catches Ezekiel reciting MLK's I Have a Dream speech as a bedtime story. Martin Luther was one of the many kings that Ezekiel told Carol he had played before. To Ezekiel's surprise, Benjamin tells him that he thinks they should side with Rick. The next morning, we get another look at the army of knights on their daily run. We see some children practicing archery, one of which has a metal replacement arm. Ezekiel says, "This is life here, but it came at a cost. I have to worry about my people." Daryl says, "You call yourself a damn king. You sure as hell don't act like one." Again, Ezekiel says, "All of this came at a cost." Ding. So, unlike the comics, the kingdom seems to not be siding with Rick right away. I'm sure next episode at the drop-off, Richard will do something stupid. Now, I know Gavin, the savior kind of in charge of the kingdom, said that next time if anything goes wrong, Richard would be the one that would have to die. But if I know the saviors, they're gonna twist the tables on us. Richard's gonna do something stupid, and Benjamin's gonna get it. I'm sure that'll get everybody on board, when Morgan's sexy white shirt has Benjamin blood all over it. Ezekiel does, however, allow Daryl to stay with them, which he begrudgingly accepts. On the way out, Sasha says to Rosita, "I knew that king guy would say no, but it still pissed me off." And Rosita snaps back, "What the hell are you telling me for? We both had sex with the same dead guy. It doesn't make us friends." What the hell, Rosita? Did you learn nothing? If this is how she feels, what was that look between her and Sasha for at the end of the last episode? I was really excited to see her having grown, but it seems like she hasn't grown at all, and I don't really like that. On his way out, Rick makes Daryl stay, telling him to try to talk some sense into Ezekiel. It's tough for Rick and Daryl to separate after just getting back together. We get this close-up on Rick's gun. To me, this says that Rick is back to being Rick Grimes. He's back to making these tough calls, like leaving Daryl, which, as we find out later, was absolutely the right call. On the way back to Alexandria, the gang is listening to the Savior's radio that Jesus has. Currently, Negan is saying a few words about the dear departed Fat Joey. For anyone who loved the obese bastard as much as I did, I'd just like to say a few words. Now, he wasn't the most badass son of a bitch, but he was loyal. He had a great sense of humor. In fact, we were just joking about oral sex with Lucille the other day. Things will not be the same now that he's dead. Without Fat Joey, Skinny Joey is just Joey. So it's a goddamn tragedy. God, even when we don't see him, Negan is the best part of this show. We see that the Saviors have blocked the road with cars. So, Rick and co start to move them when they discover an explosive trap meant to catch a herd of zombies. This is part of redirect duty, something that Fat Joey was actually in charge of, that Carl heard a little bit about while he was in the truck at the beginning of episode 7. Over the radio, they hear that Negan has discovered Daryl is gone, but decide that before they go back to Alexandria, they have to get these explosives. Then we jump into this long sequence, untying and gathering the dynamite. As they're gathering the explosives, a cocky Rosita picks one up and says, "No, I don't like the look of this one," and separates it from the group. And there really aren't any stakes here. I mean, not for 1 second did I think that any of them was just gonna blow up, let alone all of them, and most of the time they were all huddled together doing this. So to me, it was just kind of silly. But whether or not I like it or not really depends on how they inevitably use these explosives. They could do kind of a Trojan horse type of thing, where they put these explosives in with a shipment of goods that they send to the Saviors, and once it gets to the sanctuary, it blows up. Or they could just spontaneously blow Simon up, or both. Then, the craziest thing I have seen in the history of The Walking Dead happens. Rick and Michonne weed whack half the herd of zombies with this big steel cable tied between the two cars. It's crazy. It's awesome. The effects are actually pretty stellar, but again, it just lessens the gravity of the situation, and it lowers the stakes. This show is supposed to be about survivors, not superheroes. It's ironic that this was filmed on the same highway where we saw the first ever herd way back in season 2. Back then, all they could think to do was hide under the cars and wait for them to pass. Can you imagine Dale and T-Dog blowing through that herd in an impressive feat of synchronized driving? No? Me neither. Rick and Michonne get out of the cars, and the show tries to fool us something bad is going to happen by having both of them run along the edge of the herd, not away from it like any normal person would do. In addition, they're cutting to only these close shots, so we have no idea what's happening. And of course, they get out fine. Listen, it's all awesome, and I understand it's the mid-season premiere and they wanted to do something fun and crazy that didn't involve killing a character, but it's hard to ever worry about any of these characters if they can get away with something like this. I mean, look at this. Rick is pushing a zombie out of the way with dynamite in his hand. As they're pulling away, the piece of dynamite that Rosita left behind explodes. Rosita says again, yeah, I didn't like the look of that shit at all. Ding. Rick's sitting in the back seat all sweaty. I pushed it. Another doubling. And Michonne's like, it's fine. You can smile. Rick, we're the ones who live. Ugh, I'm so sorry that I am never going to be able to enjoy it when Michonne says we're the ones who live. I talked about it in my review of the last episode, that in the comic books, Rick's in a relationship with Andrea, and they have a running, let's get through this kind of line, we don't die. It's 3 words, it rolls off the tongue, and we are the ones who live is just too much. It doesn't feel right, I don't like it. We're gonna say it forever, and I don't know why they changed it. Back at Alexandria, my favorite character of all time, Tobin intercepts Rick and the gang as they walk back through the gates, having obviously hidden away their 2 guns, bunch of explosives, and car somewhere else. Tobin asks whether they found something or not, telling me that Rick must have told them that they were going out for supplies, not going to the hilltop. And just then, the saviors show up. My actual favorite character, Simon, steps out of his car. Rick, I thought it'd be longer. He's like, oh, you think we're here for a tribute? Do you? And Rick's pretty cool. He's like, is there another reason? We're here for Daryl. Negan took Daryl. Yeah, but then your son showed up, and Daryl went missing. Might be those things are related? We didn't know he was gone until right now. Then this should be easy. The saviors then start ransacking Alexandria looking for Daryl, and they are doing way more than they need to. They're smashing plates, they're even taking some stuff, and obviously nobody's very happy about it. They get to the food storage garage that has been emptied by Gabriel. Rick stumbles to find an excuse, but Simon says not to worry about it, this isn't a drop-off. If it was, though, you'd be in trouble. And that concludes the search. Obviously they don't find Daryl. One problem with this is that the audience knows Daryl's not there, so this whole scene doesn't really have any tension. And coming straight out of the scene with the herd and the dynamite, which I personally felt didn't have a lot of tension, I felt like something was lacking from this episode. Then the moment the saviors leave and the gates are shut, Rick turns around and says, what happened to the pantry? I love that as soon as they left, they got straight to business. Tobin tells Rick what happened to Gabriel, but he doesn't believe that he actually stole everything. Inside the storage room, Rick finds Gabriel's Bible. I'm a little surprised that this isn't where Gabriel left a message. Perhaps it could have been open on the verse that Gabriel read at the beginning of the episode that would prove that his intentions were good, but nothing like that is addressed. Rick then grabs Olivia's inventory catalog that we saw Gabriel look at the night before. On the very last page, the word boat is written in all caps. Aaron asks, how would he know we were out there? Good question, Aaron. And the only explanation is that during this missing scene, in between Gabriel looking around and stealing the goods, that the boots person told him that they followed Rick and Aaron back from where they stole all the goods from the boat. That is the only explanation. Then we have a pretty long scene between Aaron and Eric. Eric doesn't want Aaron to go, Aaron wants to go. I'm not too interested about these characters, mostly because I feel like Aaron's the one we're supposed to like, meaning that if Eric ever has a part to play, it's to die. To give Aaron some motivation. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the last intimate scene they have together. That the next time Eric dies. Next we see the gang plus Aaron way back at the boathouse. Fortunately for them, they find tracks. This could either be the boots person or Gabriel, doesn't really matter. They follow it to this old construction site with a big crane covered in vines, a fantastic image for the base camp of this new group. They enter a slightly larger area and then are almost immediately surrounded by people. People holding melee weapons and a bunch of guns. This is more people than we've seen in any of the communities except the Sanctuary. And in the final moments of the episode, for the first time this episode, we see Rick smiling. And the big question on everybody's lips is, who is Rick smiling at? What is Rick smiling about? And there's only really a few options. Either he sees Gabriel levitating like C-3PO above the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, or he sees his army. He sees these weapons and these people, and something he sees gives him the idea that he can win these people to their side. There's no way these people are totally evil because none of our characters make it out alive then. It's possible they're a little crazy and out there, and they might want Rick to fight in some kind of crazy zombie arena type thing. But I think in the end, Rick will win them to their side and have this whole new army to show the kingdom in the hilltop. Okay, this episode was a little all over the place. Literally, in that it went to a bunch of different locations, and in the sense that I felt like they didn't really get what they were after. Some people from the hilltop want to help them, but apparently that's not enough. They built the kingdom in the last half season only for King Ezekiel to not help them out. I felt like there was no stakes on the highway or when Simon showed up, and now you have yet another massive group that has somehow survived this long into the apocalypse. Some things were a little unbelievable, some of the acting moments didn't hit right, but a lot of it was great, and it was by no means unenjoyable. Can't wait to see some Negan and Eugene. I hope Benjamin's death is at least a little satisfying, and that Carol and Daryl have a beautiful reunion. That's all for me. Please, please remember to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and watch it again. This has been The Dude. See ya.